Gestating the Curious Minds involves adult themes and situations. Just a warning. Oh, we're starting.
Yeah, we're starting.
Welcome to Gestating the Curious Mind, where we invent a concept based on a whim that we come up with at the local watering hole, and then write a story based on that lazy documentation via voice notes on our WhatsApp chat.
All you did is, instead of a normal, funny opening quip, you just explained what we do.
Yeah, this one's a little on the nose.
A little bit on the nose.
I still think it's funny, though.
It's funny. I'm not saying it's not. I was just surprised at how detailed it was, how we really do things.
We are your entertainers, Glenn and Gertie Nuzzles. Allow us to shine a light on the process of creation for the most splendiferous fiction genre, paranormal smut. That's maybe a little misleading because there's zero smut in this story.
A lot of our stuff doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of smut.
Yeah, we started off strong. I think we thought maybe we were smuttier than we actually are.
I kind of just don't want to write about somebody having an orgasm or ejaculating.
No, it's uncomfortable.
It is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's not something I get off on. You have to be a certain kind of person to be like, I can't wait to write this and have people read it.
I heard at one point, many, many years ago, that when you're writing a smutty story, you don't feel a little bit hot and horny.
Yeah.
Then you're not doing a good job. And I do not want to be horny in front of our listeners. And I think that's part of the problem. It doesn't seem like it mixes well. I
kind of like the idea of us brainstorming a story and then we start to kind of breathe a little heavier and people start to kind of notice. Then there's kind of like us breathing and there's sort of a quiet moment and then there's an edit where people clearly know we went upstairs to go fuck. And then it's like, okay, we're back.
Yeah, I don't want to be that. I don't want anyone to know that much about me.
No, exactly. Well, all right.
Well, we've written this story now, just as a little recap. Our last episode of Gestating the Story, Curious Mind was us storyboarding this. Mm-hmm. So, I suppose you can put a link in the show note back to that episode so that people can listen if they don't know.
That's true. Well,
because it was quite a few weeks ago.
I did make a whole, separate RSS feed, like our own little show kind of situation that people can, have everything in order. But yeah, no, in our show notes, it always just links back to that. So we'll be fine.
Perfect.
Think I haven't thought about that? Think I haven't been podcasting for nigh under 5 years?
This story is yet untitled.
Yeah, what were we calling it? Oh, by the way, so I did a little catch up because it's been, a month and a half, something like that, since we did that last episode.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't remember kind of what the story's about, and I also don't remember what we talked about. So I went back and listened, and we were saying the G word version of Romani, and I had gone back and tried to bleep out all that, because you even said, I don't think we're supposed to say that. I'm like, no, we're not supposed to say that. I'm like, okay, so we'll bleep it out. I bleeped out all of them except for one.
Oh, no.
And it's me saying proudly, the Romani story, but it's the G word. And I was like, damn it, it's been out there for months.
We're doing our best, guys.
We're doing our best.
Thank you for bearing with us.
We have, but from what we talked about before, I was really focused on trying to get crows this summer to show up and eat at our house and bring us gifts.
It hasn't worked.
I read a story about a guy who had a heart attack, but he fed crows. So when the crows found out they falled over in his yard, they all tapped on people's windows and made a lot of racket until people came out and saved him. Like, I want crow nurses.
It's not going to happen for you.
No, they don't come at all. They do not come. I can't get them. We've got, house sparrows?
Yeah, lots of house sparrows. And a couple of other backyard birds, but...
They don't bring gifts.
They do not. No, just poop.
I'm the king of house sparrows.
Yeah.
That's horrible. White trash pool, we barely got it up.
Oh, and then it's just rained so much. We've used it maybe 4 times. Mm-hmm. Even today, if it was still up, it's just crummy out. It's cold. It's rainy.
It's cold and rainy. I know, with the hot weather that we had was 90 degrees out. It's like, this pool's gonna be 80. This is gonna be great. And no, it'd be raining, so we couldn't be out there. So one of the 4th time we got in, our final time, we did ceremoniously pee all over each other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gertie would come up to me and then wrap her legs around my thigh and then just piss on me.
Yep.
It was so weird.
We peed it all up, dude. And then we tore it down.
Then we tore the damn thing down. So, whatever. We'll just try again next year. But
yeah.
Comments on YouTube. There are no more comments because I shut them off.
It's probably for the best.
I got another, I think it was like I was uploading from the Glenn Reed's books. I was uploading an episode, and I'm like, here we go. I got to upload it to YouTube. And it's just, I squint, and I try not to look at the little comment section at the bottom of the control panel page thing. And I'm uploading it, and right there in front of me is like, an American, and it's that same fucking sassy butler, P.G. Wodehouse, the author. People cannot, they are weird about...
People really care about Jeeves.
But Jeeves isn't like Sherlock Holmes. It's not like... I don't know. It's not like well-written literature. It's just fluff. It's like if I made fun of the show Friends. And people are like, you don't understand what Friends means to society. Like,
yeah, no, people really care about Friends.
That's the way they are with this thing, but they're also mostly kind of racist. And so it's like, I'm just sick of this, so I shut off all comments on everything across the board. So we'll never know if anyone likes our show or not.
Oh, well.
So
you guys can email us. We send you an email.
That's true. You can email.
Please email us nice things.
That's
or
true.
Don't email us at all.
I wonder if any of the really racist people are going to keep stumbling across that one episode the one time I read a Jeeves story. Forever. And then they realize they can't leave comments, so they do start emailing. Because by God, they want to yell at someone for free content. And then recently, Unsighted had us on for their 100th episode?
Yeah.
And we got to do that.
Played a little game about storytelling. That was fun.
Which I can't listen to. They just put it out, actually. Yeah, and it sounds fun the way they describe it, but I'm like, I don't want to hear my fucking voice.
I know, you have a problem with that.
I have that. I talk too much, and I just can't stand listening to myself. It makes my skin crawl up to my neck. So that's it, kind of for updates. Do you have any updates that involve a car?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't want to talk about it. So we're going to read this story. In case you didn't listen to the storyboarding episode, it really doesn't matter.
Because you went off the rails from that?
Not too far, I don't think.
Okay.
But, you know, it is what it is at this point. The storyboard is not, it's no longer important. It takes on its own life when I start writing. So I guess go ahead and read it, and then we'll try to think up a title for it, and then we will release it all to you good people.
Yeah, we'll stick it up on Amazon. One. Okay, unnamed story, part 1. Jim McTibbet stretched his tired spine and surveyed his work for the day, laid out on his desk in the form of many spreadsheets. A photo of a cat was scotch-taped on the screen bevel of his personal computer, and his eyes lingered upon it. It was a munchkin cat, with legs much too short for its body and a genetic joke that humans ran with and beat into the ground. But it was pretty cute. Blue eyes, fluffy white fur, and highlights of light brown and tan. He closed his eyes and imagined the cat sitting in his lap, warming his loins with platonic interspecies love. Jim sighed with longing and opened his chain email that he had with his few friends. No updates had been made to the chat since he had emailed 2 days ago. A fact about how 40% of cats are ambidextrous, but otherwise can be right or left pawed. He was disappointed to see that no one had replied to this fascinating tidbit. Jim could understand this. They were all quite busy professionals. In fact, quite a few of Jim's other emails had received the same treatment. He had figured that the knowledge that cats have, up to 100 different vocalizations, would have whipped the chat into a frenzy, but it seemed to go unacknowledged by his busy friends. Jim could understand this as an actuary himself. Once upon a time, he wanted to be a cat veterinarian. Upon learning that he would have to take care of more than just cats, that he was in fact allergic to cats, he instead decided to dedicate himself to the noble cause of counting. His dry personality made him perfect for the tedious task, and he did well for himself, determining patterns, providing reports to whichever large company was contacting him at the moment, though on those hard days he thought about cats and the life he could have had with their warm, soft bodies. He decided to cheer himself up with a quick skim of the comic section of the newspaper for his favorite comic. The comic opened with Garfield aggressively stabbing a grapefruit half with a spoon, stating, "The only thing I hate more than grapefruit Then Jim laughed in surprise at the second panel depicted Garfield receiving a spray of grapefruit juice in the face. The third panel portrayed a very wet Garfield, finishing his original thought with is hating grapefruit. Jim mused, the only thing I hate more than grapefruit is hating grapefruit. Profound. His stomach rumbled. He could use a grapefruit about now. Part 2. Jim was making his rounds at the grocery store, but when he reached the frozen section, he realized he had bypassed the fresh produce. He doubled back to retrieve the grapefruit he desired. There, he found a woman standing in front of the citrus, carefully weighing the fruits. She was methodical and careful, and Jim could respect that. Oh, it helped that her orange hair and well-built frame was familiar in a way that attracted him to her. Oh, he couldn't put his claw into it, but he was intrigued. Ethelinda stood in the cold air of the produce section, assessing the citrus. It was crisp outside, even for Cutwater, Georgia, and citrus was long out of season. She was suspicious of the selection. Each grapefruit was carefully examined for bruising and weighed for its heaviness comparative to its size to divine its relative juiciness. She ignored the aching in her fingers, a reminder of the long week of packing orders for the local warehouse. It was hard work that carved her whole body into marble, but her muscles were always sore and tired. She wanted to enjoy a piece of refreshing citrus and then relax into a bath before bed. You're really hammering in the love of citrus. She closed her eyes, wishing the ability of a witch to come upon her and help her select the best option. I like the idea of fantasizing. Man, I wish I just had a witch that could come and help me get the right kind of gas for my automobile. She felt for a moment a chill run through her, moist, unlike the dry grocery air. She opened her eyes to find a rather common-looking man standing across the produce stand from her. He gestured with his face at the grapefruit in her hand as his hands were tucked into the pockets of his heavily pleated pants. A pervert. Ethelinda turned to see if there would be any witness and felt a little better when her eyes landed upon a teen in a green apron. Before she could move in the direction of the teen, the man spoke. Did you know cats couldn't taste the sweet notes of that piece of fruit? They can't taste sweet at all. Is this true? Did you look this up?
Yeah. This is a heavily researched story.
Wow. Ethelinda looked at the pervert, who was now grinning with satisfaction. Her joints creaked as she lowered her arm to relieve the ache caused by holding the fruit she still clutched. A rage bubbled up within her. This pervert was well dressed in the current yuppie style. His cart held Stouffer's lasagna. This man was living the good life, and yet he derived satisfaction from taunting someone such as herself, a working-class woman, looking for a simple pleasure. How dare he? A humid breeze blew past the two. The pervert's smile faltered. Got a lot of spit in my mouth because I have a mint. So now it's just making me froth. Part 3. Did you know cats can't taste the sweet notes of that piece of fruit? They can't taste sweet at all. The cat fact bumbled from his lips as he grinned like a maniac. Oh, he couldn't help it. He was elated to be speaking with another person for the first time in days, and she was interested in grapefruit. Oh, perhaps it was fate. Some people add salt to their grapefruit to make them taste sweeter. Not cats, though. They can't. They can't taste sweet. Her cold gaze did not waver. Jim went to move, but found himself frozen in place, unblinking. As he stared back at the mystery ginger woman with the grapefruit seemed to grow little ears and tails from the distortion of his peripheral vision. His eyes burned. The mystery woman's lips were moving fast, but she was speaking too low for him to hear. Behind him, fruit was falling off the stands. This is quite a moment. The teen working on the stocking grapes nearby sighed deeply. Jim felt a primal fear that went up in his chest. Something was happening. The woman's arms jerked up as if she were a puppet, hovering about the fruit, before plunging each of her fingers into the grapefruits before her. Some juice sprayed up toward her face and the hair from her pressure, but she lifted her arms again, gesturing the fruit toward Jim with juice running down her arms, soaking her sleeves. Jim felt a strange sense of recognition again, but could not place her. Just as a cat's tongue can sense no sweet, your eyes will sense no sweet. Only the bitter pith of creaturehood. Part 4. Jim awoke in his apartment on all fours. Forehead resting in a dish of Stouffer's lasagna. Just like Garfield does in the cartoons. He took a moment to take stock of his current situation. He was still wearing his fashionably pleated pants, so that was a good start. Shirt was buttoned and remained demurely tucked. Nothing seemed to be out of place in the kitchen, and a quick peek over his shoulder confirmed his front door to be closed and locked. Had someone spiked the frozen lasagnas at the lady who poisoned those Tylenol bottles a few years back? A wave of nausea hit him, and he scurried into the bathroom on all fours, just barely making it to the toilet to evacuate the offending pasta. He perched on the floor a few minutes, assessing the damage. He didn't seem to be particularly ill. Perhaps a shower would help. Jim turned on the water and waited, testing different temperatures, but no temperature seemed appealing. The thought of getting wet was gut-wrenching. He finally forced himself to bathe, if only to remove the lasagna remains caked to his face. Stepping out of the shower, Jim felt temporary relief, but terror gripped his heart when he looked into the mirror to find several long black whiskers protruding from his cheeks. He didn't even have enough facial hair to grow a mustache on a good day. What was this? He touched his soft cheeks, fingers feeling for the thick hairs. They were not there. He ran his fingers down the mirror, smudging the lines. Only a drawing. Jim felt confused, then again horrified. Was someone in his apartment? Jim searched his unit top to bottom, found nothing, but increasingly felt as if there were a pair of eyes watching him. He was sweating, the humidity rising along with his panic. Not strange for Gutwater George, perhaps, but strange considering he had air conditioning. A thump of his door nearly made him jump out of his skin. Oh, yes, he chuckled, trying to break the tension. The newspaper. Jim opened the paper and allowed his eyes to trace over the headlines. He blinked a few times and rubbed his eyes. That was funny. He could have sworn all the words on the page were various spellings of the word meow, but clearly that wasn't the case now that he had a better look. I've always been a zombie without my first cup of coffee, Jim chortled nervously, quoting one of his favorite Garfield comics. That's right, comics. That would perk him up. Jim shuffled the pages until he reached the comic section. It was Sunday. Full-color print greeted him and filled him with hope. Maybe everything was fine. Today's Garfield comic depicted the silly orange cat eating a tray of lasagna. As soon as the meal was finished, it magically refilled with a new, fresh lasagna. Tragically, Garfield awoke from the dream to lament that he knew was too good to be true. Jim was reading and slowly shuffling toward his kitchen, absorbing the bittersweet message. When he looked up to find the tray of half-eaten lasagna that he had abandoned on the floor was full and fresh, hot out of the oven. Fear and nausea took over his mind and bowels. Jim fled. Part 5.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, thanks. Jim's feet were guiding him. He wasn't actually sure where he could even go. Maybe to his friend Jim's. Other Jim lived just a few blocks away. He scurried, thinking briefly that he would be a lot faster on all fours, but he resisted the thought. Jim's house was neatly manicured, with a flower bed that was bathed in rays of sun. Perhaps a nap? Jim shook his head and chased the thought away. What was happening to him? A woman answered the door. Something that surprised Jim. Is Jim here? Jim asked timidly. The woman eyed Jim's sweaty face and called out over her shoulder. Other Jim appeared quickly, responding to the tone of her voice that suggested potential danger. Other Jim's tight, no-nonsense mouth became a frown with disappointment. Jim. Other Jim exhaled. Why'd you name them both Jim? You're amazing. You should just write a story where everyone has the same name. Pick like a gender-neutral kind of name for all men and women. Jim, other Jim exhaled. The name as if he was a deflating balloon. Sorry I didn't call first. I'm just having a strange morning and I need someone to talk to. Jim suddenly felt out of place. Other Jim was one of his friends from college. Someone who once considered a best friend. Over time, Jim became more involved with his work, and he supposed he really only invested in his cat tidbit emails to keep in touch. He actually wasn't sure how long it had been since he had seen Other Jim face to face. Well, Other Jim did not seem to have the words, and instead just gestured inside. This is my wife, Belinda. Jim, you and the names. Jim faced the woman who was blinking at him. Jim stuffed his hands deep within his pockets, feeling his throat dry out from the tension. A wife? Other Jim was married? A picture hung on the hallway. Other Jim surrounded by their mutual college friends on their wedding day. Jim felt his heart tighten in his chest, wondering how many other events he had missed. Other Jim shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable, and Belinda crossed her arms across her chest. Hey, did you know cats yawn to break this? I'll read that again, sorry. I just like that he's opening with a cat fact when he's nervous. Did you know cats yawn to break a tense situation? Jim made an exaggerated yawn, mimicking the cat fact. He hoped this would allow show Belinda that he was harmless. And maybe even a little charming. But the yawn was out of Jim's control at the moment he opened his mouth. Jim's jaw cracked, his mouth opening wider and wider, his head feeling like it was splitting in half. His wiry tongue protruded and curled, and a gurgle escaped his throat as his mouth came back together normal again. Show me a mouser, and I'll show you a cat with bad breath, Belinda droned in a monotone voice. A new wave of nausea hit Jim, and he nervously pawed at his cheeks. Easy, Belinda. Jim doesn't do perky. Other Jim was standing next to Belinda, his arms hanging limply at his side, matching Belinda's monotone. Jim backed toward the door, stepping haphazardly. He yowled and looked down. A furry orange appendage was under his foot, and a sharp pain was radiating to his ass. He looked to Other Jim and Belinda again. Belinda with a mask of alarm, and Other Jim with a look of disgust. When his eyes returned to his feet, the tail was gone. My tail! It was all Jim could squeak out of his parched throat. You should leave, Jim. Other Jim shook his head and brushed past Jim, opening the door, gesturing out. A crowd of orange cats sat on the lawn, in the bushes, in the trees. They watched Jim stagger through the door toward them. But Jim's closed his eyes and walked until he felt grass turn to asphalt. And when he opened his eyes again, he was alone on the quiet street, a ray of sunshine warming his face. Part 6. Jim retraced his steps from the previous day. There had to be a clue as to what he was experiencing. He was dragging his feet past his grocery store when a teen in a green apron looked up from where he was sweeping. Oh, no, buddy, I don't think so. You and that lady were banned until you wrote a letter of apology. No letter, no admittance. What do you mean? What happened? Jim asked. The teen rolled his eyes. We just got cameras. You can't pull this trick anymore. We have you on videotape. Jim flushed with embarrassment as someone who was piecing together the events of a drunken night. Could I see it? So my apology letter can be specific? A rotund man in a polo shirt came to join the team. His badge stated that he was the manager. His name was Heathcliff. Jim bristled. That broad you were with ruined 10 grapefruit, and you took a header into the rest of them. Do you know how expensive citrus is this time of year? Then you ran off with your frozen lasagna without paying. At least the lady stayed put. The cops have her at the station. A woman? Jim could see her now in his mind's eye. Yes, a redhead. The grapefruits. Here, does this cover it? Jim emptied his wallet. Heathcliff accepted the cash, eyeing Jim suspiciously. I still want a letter of apology. Heathcliff puffed his chest. Eat your heart out, Heathcliff. The sassy response surprised both Heathcliff and Jim. But Jim didn't have time to consider the personality shift. He just had to find that redhead. I love the first line. Part 7. The police station smelled strongly of men. Jim resisted the urge to pee in the corner. If this check bounces tomorrow, you're both gonna be in that cell. A cop was waving the check in Jim's direction with one hand while opening the cell door with the other. The redhead emerged, looking fatigued. Her eyes landed on Jim, and she briefly considered re-entering the cell, but the cop slammed the door behind her. So, They tell me your name is Ethelinda? Jim's hands were in his pockets. The woman crossed her arms and strode past him. Wait, he called after her. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Please, you need to undo your curse. Ethelinda stopped in her tracks, fist balled up in rage next to her. You ruined my night off. You got me banned from the closest grocery store to my home. You got me locked up in a prison cell. And now you have the audacity to accuse me of witchcraft? Ethelinda was hot, stepping towards Jim, now finger pointing in his face. You're a disgusting pervert. Does saving me from a predicament you put me in get you off? Jim was shaking his head so fast he felt dizzy. But there was stuff happening to me that I don't understand. I remember you whispering something. Then you cursed me. Something about creaturehood. Ethelinda frowned. There was a period of time between her first identifying the pervert and her eventual apprehension by the police that was murky. I did feel a strange sensation when we met, like something that was enveloping me. Well, if you're not controlling it, then something is messing with the both of us. Jim was tingling with anticipation. It was frustrating that he had met this dead end. But that must mean that the grocery store was the answer. We have to break in. Break in where? Ethelinda asked. The grocery store. Part 8. Jim and Ethelinda approached the back of the grocery store after closing time. I love that you made this into another heist.
I know. I can't help it.
It's kind of your fallback. I don't know what to do with this story. Well, heist. Jim and Ethelinda approached the back of the grocery store after closing time. Jim held his arm out to slow Ethelinda, gesturing at the new security camera hanging from the corner of the building. Well, how are we going to get past that? Ethelinda asked. She wasn't quite sure why she was agreeing to commit a crime with this weirdo. Maybe there was a real curse, and she didn't want it to affect her more than it already had if that was the case. Well, we can disguise ourselves and run for it, Jim suggested. Or you can get fucked, a voice spoke from behind the pair who shrieked with surprise, and Jim and Ethelinda turned to find nothing. A wet breeze blew despite the otherwise dry condition. Is something there? Called Jim. He tried to sound brave, but his tongue was fat with terror. There's something there, a mocking voice repeated back to him. I love when you do this with the uppercase and lowercase. What's wrong, cat boy? Did you find out that cats don't like the smell of citrus? Jim's terror dulled. What? W-H-U-P? Yes, totally. Take your lady Garfieldette and go home, loser. A mist was starting to solidify in front of Jim and Ethelinda. This was fun, but if you're going to come bug me on my turf, then we've reached the end of the road. The mist now had depth to it. A face emerged, then a body. A portly man with curly dark hair and pants pulled up very high to his waist. Who are you? Ethelinda asked. I've seen you before in the store, but you were, opaque. Yeah, the name is Mateo Gibbs. I died on this spot quite a few decades ago. When they built this store, I was excited to experience something new for a change. But oh boy, are you Breathers Bad Company? Breathers? Is that living people? They're breathers? I started off shopping in my corporeal form. Am I saying that right? Corporeal. But that makes a lot of energy, and no one really appreciates it, so you have to have a little fun and get creative. Mateo picked at his fingernails. What do you mean creative? Jim was feeling like a balloon about to burst. Well, you know what I mean, turd. Haunted stuff. Mateo scratched his crotch and smacked Jim in the face. What? Wait, with the same hand, or like one hand scratching, the other hand snap?
With the crotch hand.
With the crotch hand. Scratched his crotch and smacked Jim in the face. This one was my magnum opus, my Citizen Kane thanks me, if you will. I guess I can't take all the credit. You were hanging by a thread to start with. Jim's whole body flushed with relief. It was you? With the lasagna and the whiskers? And the cat hallucinations? Yeah, Mateo leaned against the dumpster. Ugh, I'm so bored. Anyway, bye, losers. I'm gonna go watch Heathers. Mateo dematerialized, leaving for a moment only his hand with a raised middle finger. I love this Mateo.
Yeah, I love
This is the best version of him so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
he dematerializes, but the hand is still there, flicking him off. It's like the last thing to go. Jim and Ethelinda stood dumbstruck by what they had experienced. Do you want to go get a glass of milk somewhere? Ethelinda asked, breaking the silence. I don't think I have the stomach for milk right now, but a steak sounds good. Hey, did you know that dog nose prints are unique, like humans' fingerprints? That's hilarious.
The end.
The end. So they just stay cursed? Is that how that works out?
No, I figured they realized that there is no curse, that the ghost was just fucking with them.
It's all psychological, sure.
And he's just shifted his hyperfixation from cats to dogs.
I did catch that,
so nothing really changes.
I love that he's got a bad association with cats now.
Yeah.
Are there dog comics for a character like this to read in the future? I don't, like, not really Snoopy.
I know there are comics with dogs.
Yeah, like the Peanuts.
Yeah, Peanuts.
No sassy dog?
Oh, Marmaduke.
I don't think I've ever read a Marmaduke in my entire life.
Oh, he's a Great Dane.
Like I said that so politely and formally. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is he also sassy where he steals people's food or something?
No, he doesn't speak. He just gets into silly situations. So it's like the neighborhood and the family responding to him, but the main character is Marmaduke, the dog.
Okay. It seems like you're defending Marmaduke. It sounds really boring.
I'm not defending Marmaduke. I read a lot of Garfield comics for this, and they're all bad.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think back on it because I loved reading comics in the newspaper when I was a kid, because my mom on the weekends sometimes would work at a luncheonette. Mm-hmm. So I would just sit there because I had nowhere else to be or nothing to do. So I would read the comics.
Yeah.
And I like them for that reason. But when I think about them or anytime I look back at them, like that weird, one of my favorite scenes in this, if I do say so myself, was when he goes to try to talk to other Jim.
Oh,
and then Belinda and other Jim are just quoting Garfield at him.
I was catching that. I also love that you said the arms are just flatly by their sides. Yeah. And I was imagining like a John character, just like he's always stiff looking. Like Jim Davis did not really, weirdly draw them very well. It was really strange.
And it changes a lot when you read the comics. I know it ran for many decades, so it makes sense that the art style is going to change, but it changes a lot. It
changed over time. Sorry, I'm being a nerd now. Back in the 80s when I was a little kid, Garfield was all the rage, and so my mom would come home with those weird rectangular-shaped Garfield books, so I had like 1 through 8 or something. Cute. And so I was seeing how like... And also, she got me this book of just Jim Davis's art in general, where he just did sort of weird stuff. And he was really, really talented, like expressive and really good. I'm like, holy shit, this guy is good. Then you look at like the early Garfields, and they were kind of a little bit more expressive, a little bit more artsy. Like somebody's arm would at least be bent or something, like as if he's reaching for something. But then as the years went on, they just became these stiff little figures. So when you're saying like the arms laying like limply at their sides, I'm like, yeah, that's a Jim Davis comic.
Yeah, that's just how they look.
He's just too lazy to draw anything anymore.
They're all just kind of standing there.
Just standing there stiffly, shouting lines at each other. Yeah, that's cute. I do love the multiple Jims.
I know. That's when I asked you if you wanted to read it, and you're like, no, I trust you. And I'm like, okay, then they're both named Jim. Because that was my first... I was like, what name can I give him? And I'm like, I feel like Jim.
I honestly think...
really the best name.
We should try to... We'll never remember this later, because it'll be another year before you write anything, but we should play around with the idea of there's only 2 names in the entire story we write. But it's a cast of like at least 10 characters.
Oh my god, that would be exhausting.
You could have a Jim and a Stacy, so all women are named Stacy, all men are named Jim. But then there's, I don't know.
There would have to be a modifier of some sort. Like there would have to be not a modifier, qualifier.
Yeah.
Like there has to be a nickname associated with it then, which is kind of funny.
It's going to have to be, or you could just set it up and who's talking to who. You could say, like...
You have to remember which Stacy is involved in which drama to just by context know which Stacy we're talking about.
But I would love it if by the end of it, you finally bring all 10 characters together in the one final scene, and it's like Jim and Stacy and Jim and Stacy. Jim and Stacy told Jim and the other Stacy, like, you gotta run, and Stacy's like, who?
They're all confused, too.
And you just get, like, one paragraph. It's like, Jim, Stacy, and Jim were walking next to Jim. So you just, like, have this big confusing paragraph.
They're like, Jim did what? I cannot
Jim?
believe that Jim would do something like that. And then they find out at the end that they were talking about a different Jim altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
It'd be worth remembering in the future. Well, there you go. That's your newest book. We got to figure out a name for it before I can put it.
I know. What's our name? The Three Garfields Problem.
These are ideas you've written down?
No, I didn't write it down. I just thought of it.
Oh, okay. The Three Garfield Problem? Yeah. Like the Three Body Problem.
Yep.
Okay, we'll make that one. That's our fallback. Let's see if we can spitball some more just to be safe.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll get us into trouble because we're using a copyrighted name.
Garfield and also the Three Body Problem?
Yeah.
Everything about it's copyrighted?
All of it. Should it be a grapefruit pun or a cat pun?
Cats aren't that grapefruit. I don't know. I'm not really like a pun man. We're really thinking hard here. Let's just go dumb.
The purring. The whispering. the whiskering.
The whiskering.
The
whiskering's really good.
And it sounds 80s.
It sounds 80s for sure. The whiskering is really good. I think you just nailed it. Perfect.
Let's do it.
The whiskering. Perfect. Well, there you go. That's it. We've
awesome.
Kicked out another book. Should we focus? Do we have a plan for the future before we wrap this episode up?
I'd like to write another full-length book.
I kind of like the nun idea, but it will be more complicated.
Oh, that's going to be really complicated because we have to look up tax law. This is easy because I just read a bunch of Cat Facts and Garfield comics.
Sure.
But tax law is not my thing. But it's so funny.
We should make something very Mateo-focused. Like, we should just do 100% Mateo's story.
Oh, like his, I guess the prequel to all of these. His life
his
leading to his
actual
death.
life? Oh, we could do that. And wasn't that supposed to... I forget what year he died. Was it like the 1600s or something ridiculous?
I think something like that, because our first book was set in 17-something.
What if he worked at a nunnery?
Well, we know he died a merchant.
He died a merchant. True.
And we know he's an asshole. A virgin merchant. And that's about all we need. So everything else
Sure.
could be... We could write his autobiography if we wanted to.
We could.
Because he theoretically exists in this universe.
I know, we've created this whole Mateo thing.
Yeah.
I feel like we had to get back to Mateo's roots. He's kind of been sidelined a little bit in the last couple stories. Though I do love this version of Mateo, the really snotty, shitty person.
That was a lot of fun to write. Yeah. It felt a little bit like a cop-out, but it seemed Mateo enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he was snotty and shitty in the first book.
But this is like crystallized snotty and shitty on a level we've never written before.
No.
I was just thinking like the other day.
But it's also very 80s. I'm bored.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go watch Heathers in the theater. But I was just thinking about how amazing it was when you wrote about how he gave a woman an orgasm by materializing his hand inside her body. Yep.
I liked that book, The Hanukkah Heist.
Yeah, Hanukkah Heist is one of your finest works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to figure out what the next one is. Maybe we should make it more Mateo focused. Or we could, whether it's the story of his life or we pick a theme that we come up with when we're drinking too much over at the one place nearby our house where we come up with all these ideas.
That we won't name because we don't want to dox ourselves.
Yep. And so we'll come up with something, but we should make it Mateo focused. Like if it's some sort of gumshoe solving a crime thing, but it's either the ghost of Mateo or maybe when he was alive back in, like, say, the 1700s in America, solving a crime that eventually leads to him becoming a merchant and then choking to death on one of his own purses. I forget what it was.
Yeah, he was selling little leather satchels, like tiny little purses, and he was juggling them. And one went down his throat, and he choked to death. And the woman he was selling them to tried to save him, and he said, "No, let me go."
Yeah, I love. He just kind of looked at her with pleading eyes, like, "Don't let me have this."
So I'm sure he had a fascinating life, and I think it would be really fun to dig into that.
All right, we're going to do a Mateo-focused one next time.
We can do it decade by decade. How about we do that?
What do you mean?
So we'll break the chapters into like each 10 years of his life. We'll write about them.
Oh,
so
man,
we
I
can kind
can't
of
wait
stretch
to
it out.
Write about his childhood.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it was unpleasant.
Like a dad that wouldn't stop masturbating behind the barn.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be something.
Yeah.
Something to fuck that kid
Something
up.
weird in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
We never know how to end these things. I was holding that.
Wow.
Yeah. That was part of the reason why I was kind of drifting as I was reading. So I'm like, I could feel this thing come up, and I'm like fighting to keep it down so I don't burp in the middle of a word.
Like it's coming. It's coming.
Want to contact us? Don't. This isn't about you. But if you have to, my email is glenn.nuzzles, Nuzzles, @gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter, @HouseNuzzle. But don't bother us, because we're too busy working.